From the Great Basin to the Rockies to the four corners of Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico, this is KMMU, Main Street Media Utah, coming to you live. You can find us on Rumble, YouTube, Twitter X, and our website, kmmu.org. Please join our host, Goud Maragani, for the Goud Crowd.
Oh, okay, I guess we're here. Okay. I thought there was one more piece, Mr. Producer.
No, well, like I said, I didn't have quite enough time to prepare that, but next time we will.
Oh, got it. Okay. Sorry, I was confused.
It's all yours. Take it away.
Okay. Well, welcome to the Goud Crowd. I was gonna, first of all, we'll have the phone lines open, so feel free to call in. If the producer could put the phone number up, that would be great. And just if you're listening, the number is, give me a second, it is 385-899-2134. Now, I want to start, I was actually just kind of looking at some, I guess there were some protests today, so I thought, let's talk about this for a second. So these were actually, what surprised me is these were in Utah. So let me share my X feed. And we'll go. So okay, this is the Tribune. You see this? And I guess they're out there. It's President's Day. So I guess according to this, they are protesting the actions of Donald Trump and Elon Musk and urging Democrat leaders to fight back. Okay, whatever. I thought this photo is interesting. So here's a guy, a liberal, holding an American flag upside down. That's always nice. It makes me want to support them. And we've even made libs of TikTok. And I think this is the second time in the last week. So let's listen to this. I thought this was kind of interesting. I'm sure it'll make a lot of you want to also become liberals.
About the people, and the people, I see people with disabilities.
Just so we're clear, 60% of Utahns voted for Trump, and Trump won the popular vote. Now, because of places like California and New York, where they do have cheating because they don't have secure voting systems, they were able to I think, eat into his margins in terms of popular vote. But he won the popular vote, he won the national vote, he won all 7 swing states, and he won a mandate. So, and that was against $1 billion of spending by the Democrats, the entire mainstream media being against him, and he still won. That is a full-on mandate. This person is in the minority and just doesn't realize it.
You're beautiful. I see black people, you're beautiful. I see immigrants, you're beautiful. I see queer people, you're beautiful. I see Christians. As long as
we're going to talk about what it means to be queer, because I'm actually puzzled by this, by the term myself.
Natives, anyone, you are beautiful. Thank you for existing. If no one's told you that.
Low standards, very low standards. You just have to exist, and she's going to thank you for it. No accomplishments, just exist, show up to a protest, probably get paid by some lefty like George Soros.
Thank you for existing. God thanks you for existing. Christians stand with you.
But I don't even think this woman believes in God. So I'm pretty sure she doesn't.
We are Christians, stand with you. We are here and we are ready to fight because this is not okay. And so I'm going to end with just, I think, kind of what's our equivalent in the queer community of amen. It is a feminine nomenon. Let's go.
This gets kind of interesting.
Hello, people who choose to fight back. I am a trans man in Utah.
I don't know what that means. So I guess she is a trans man. No.
There are slurs on my bathroom walls in my public school.
Well, I'll say people shouldn't write slurs on bathroom walls, but I feel like that's been going on since the beginning of time. Like that's you gotta kind of get used to this stuff. You'll go to public bathrooms everywhere, and people write slurs inside the stalls. That was just life. Really, not that big of a deal, I think.
They can take away our rights. They can yell at us on the street, but they will never snuff us out.
For those of you that are just listening, she's wearing a trans flag. I'm assuming that she thinks she's a boy, but I'm a little bit unclear here. I will say this, that I actually think if Utah is way too accepting of transgenderism, and this, I'll talk about this in a minute, but this has led to a mental health crisis in the state, and young girls and boys who are suffering from gender dysphoria will benefit a lot if we make a concerted effort to eradicate the transgender from the government and to push back against this and make it so that people like her understand this is not a real thing. Transgenderism is not real. You cannot change your sex no matter what you do. So the best thing to do is to work to become comfortable in your body. And a lot of times, if she's in high school, which is what I'm assuming based on what she said so far, she's probably just uncomfortable in her body. She's growing. It's totally normal. And I think what's happened is a lot of parents, instead of explaining to their children, you're going to go through puberty, you're going to grow, you're going to be awkward, you're going to feel weird, but at the end of this, you'll become an adult and you'll become comfortable in your body. Just give it time. They want kids to not feel those things, even though you need to feel all of that in order, I think, to become an adult who's comfortable in your skin. So I would just say, I think a lot of the efforts that we're making actually will benefit this girl, even though she doesn't know it yet.
We will not submit to bigotry.
Okay, well, so that was, that's like full on crazy. Here's one more. Yeah, I guess now we're moving to DC, but here's the drag queens have shown up in DC.
Charlie's, oh my gosh, here I am at the protest.
Yeah, I hope we're not going to freeze too much.
50-51. It is so exciting to be down here with so many people fighting the good fight and doing the good things, darlings. We have to get to the streets, make our voices heard, and don't forget, darlings, while you're doing it, stay gorgeous.
Yeah, he should take his own advice on the Stay Gorgeous party. Looks like a clown. Okay, so this weekend, I have a friend who's in town, and so on Saturday, I actually went to see Lady Bunny as a drag queen. I don't think that he claims to be a girl, except they'll sometimes use female pronouns because it kind of just goes with the humor and trying to be funny and campy. I'll play you a little video from it because I thought this was actually really funny. But what struck me about this was, I've got a few pictures up here. This one, let me show you this one. This is actually a trans woman from Utah who is a comedian. Now I'm going to use his actual pronouns, but I think he said he goes by she, they. He's clearly got mental health issues. He talked about how he's autistic. And the solution for that was to trans himself, which is unfortunate. But and the thing was, he had some funny jokes, but a lot of it actually wasn't very funny. And a lot of it was too political and very focused on this. Everybody in the room, except for me, I guess, felt like they were being put upon by Trump, and this was horrible for them. And the Trump administration is going to destroy their lives, and they're being discriminated against, and they're victims. Although I feel like that seems to generally be the theme if you're queer. This is Lady Bunny. Just a still picture in here. Okay, I won't play the whole thing, but I'll just say he goes, like, Lady Bunny goes, we're into totally inappropriate humor. It was fantastic. So in that song, he's talking, his question is it Ozempic or AIDS? Like, you know, I think there's a lot of people that would probably find that offensive, but he should be offended. You should be able to offend people in humor, and you can have some fun with it. He actually did a lot of songs that were parodies, and overall pretty good. And the least political of the three comedian performers. So he was actually the funniest of the three. The two that were from Salt Lake City, one was a trans woman, another one was a gay guy who said he was rated the funniest comedian in Salt Lake City. And I'll just say that if he's the funniest, we need to do some work on comedy because he wasn't that funny. At one point, Lady Bunny actually got up, because part of it was that the two comedians before him were making fun of him a lot, like, oh, he's super old, and lady, you know, he's whatever, he was around when the dinosaurs were alive, blah, blah, blah. But Lady Bunny came out, and the gay guy was actually morbidly obese, I would say. And so Lady Bunny said, you know, the one thing is that comedian shows you that black is not always slimming. That made me laugh. Anyway, so point being, I just found that it was too political of a show, and political, and like, I'm fine with comedy, but it wasn't funny. It was just people saying that they're victims, screaming and shouting about how awful it is in America, how they feel discriminated against, they're victims, blah, blah, blah. It just kept going on and on. One theme of the whole thing, though, was this idea of being queer. And I was having trouble trying to figure out what exactly it means to be queer. And the reason why I didn't understand this is because, you know, like, I'm gay, so I'm actually the G in the LGB. As I said, we are cutting the TQ plus out. But if you count the TQ plus, I thought the Q stood for questioning, but I guess it stands for questioning or queer. You can decide which one you want. So I went online and I looked it up, and this is what queer means. Let me show you guys. So queer, according to the center, well, this is like the LGBTQ Community Center of the Desert. I don't know where this is, but queer has been adopted as an all-encompassing term for those who do not identify as straight or cisgender, but prefer not to use a more specific term. With regard to gender identity, the term genderqueer is synonymous to not cisgender. So I don't see, as someone who's actually gay, I'm happy to identify as gay. It describes really everything that you need to know about me. That's probably, I don't think is particularly interesting, but you know, in terms of like, who do I want to date? Who do I want to be in a relationship with that includes the adult activities with a man? And that's all you need to know. Queer, even though this is giving this kind of broad scale definition, I see this as problematic for a couple of reasons. One is it now lumps in people with all sorts of problems, is what I would say, mental health issues, into people that are just lesbian, gay, or bisexual. This isn't a mental health problem. It's just who you are. Or it's not even who you are. It's just who you have, your sexual preference or your sexual orientation. That's all it is. And so this means, though, if you call yourself queer, like if I say I'm queer, a trans person could be queer. So now we're once again part of the same community. Yeah, I now have to be in a community with a trans person who I think is mentally ill. I have to be in the same thing as like someone who's asexual, which I just think means that you have probably some hormonal problems if you're an adult and you don't have any sexual desires at all. It's kind of unusual. And then there's a bunch of other things in there, right? Because it's like the QIA plus. There's a bunch of letters in there. I don't know what they all mean, but everything after the B, so LGB, everything else is just a mental illness. So queer is being used as a way to now lump those people back in with people like me. I don't want them to be a part of my community. So I'm cutting this out. No more. I am not queer. I felt uncomfortable at the show for queer people. It was a queer Valentine's Day celebration, which apparently means you're just angry about politics. You're angry that you didn't win this time, you quote unquote win. You think you're always a victim. And I don't think any of those things. I just want to live my life. I want to go and try to improve policy, where I live. And then in terms of, I would like to find someone at some point who maybe I could go on. And maybe that's the solution though. Maybe that's the solution. Next year, instead of going to a show like this on Valentine's Day, I need to just go on a date with another gay man, so that I can not have to participate in stuff like this. But the other thing is this, I actually think queer is also, and it says, if there's another section here, it says, now queer has become a symbol of defiance and empowerment. And more, it's becoming a political statement of their own agency. So this is the piece. It's actually, in addition to now lumping in people who have mental health problems with those of us who are LGB, queer is also a political identity. It's another way of just saying you're a Democrat. That's all it is. And so I am not queer. I think most of my gay friends are not queer. And they probably would not have enjoyed that show. So it's unfortunate. I will say it's unfortunate though, because there's a lot of unhappiness there of people that are just out of their minds. And I'll also say this. I realized I don't really go out that late. So the show ended at like 11:30. I thought I was going to fall asleep in the middle of it, which is weird. Okay, so now let me stop sharing. And I will now take you to just one more thought on this. And maybe this is the difference as well, is like when you meet conservative gays, lesbians, and bisexual people, what you find is that our sexual orientation isn't like the main piece of our identity, right? It's just kind of an interesting thing. It's also like my parents are Indian and they immigrated here. I think it's interesting. I'm not really sure that it's the centerpiece of my personality, although you will find out I do things that are probably based on the fact that my parents have these tendencies, right? So, or the culture is different. So I like to eat Indian food. I like to cook Indian food. I understand those things a little bit better, but I think that's just interesting. It's not necessarily definitive. Versus, I think the left wing people who are gay as well, but also this whole queer, people who think they're queer, that's the central part of their identity, is that they'll be like, I'm queer, and everything else about me builds off of that. And when you meet them, what you realize is that there's not much to it. Every single thing is a violation of something that they believe in. I know this person. I'll say person because I'm hoping to interview this person one day and bring them on the show, because I think the person is actually very fascinating. But the person I think would say they were queer. They're also trans. And there's so many left-wing issues that they believe in that they'll never, ever be able to just live a life. So I remember once sitting and listening to a speech by this person, and the person said, oh, we need to make sure that Starbucks baristas have appropriate benefits, that trans people can use the bathroom of their choice and play the sports that they want, that immigrants never get deported. Like, it was like we have open borders, all this stuff. Every single left-wing issue was part of this person's core philosophies. And so they can never be a happy person, right? Because you're always sitting here essentially trying to destroy the country, but all of your philosophies are part of your personality. So, and it's all things that you will never, ever win in this country. Because what you find is that most people don't want open borders. Trump just proved that. Most people want illegal aliens deported. Trump has shown that as well. I don't think that's translated into Utah yet, where we have kind of a weak GOP. But, I think that is what you have to kind of think about when you're thinking queer and liberal, gays, lesbians, trans, whatever, and then conservative, lesbian, gays, and bisexuals. We're very different. Okay, let's talk about the legislative session so far. It's a 45-day session. I don't know what day we're on, but it sure feels like it has been going on for a long time. And I think it started the day after inauguration. And so I wanted to start by talking about SB 277. So this is a bill. I didn't get the link to this. Hold on. This is a bill that Mike McKell has proposed. For those of you who don't know, Mike is Governor Cox's brother-in-law. He's an ambulance chaser. And if you're a lawyer, what that means is that he's the guy that likes to take your personal injury lawsuit on if you get into a car accident or you burn yourself with McDonald's coffee, whatever it is you do. That's his business. And also he is a cheapskate. We learned that last year during the elections. In Utah County, they had the clerk said, I am no longer going to put prepaid postage on the return envelopes for your ballot. And so what happens is that there's a couple of things. One is, and I think I've talked about this before, but if you stick that envelope into the mail without a stamp, the Postal Service will still deliver it to your clerk. They'll do that, and then they'll charge the clerk. But in Utah County, something like 80% of people or more put stamps on those envelopes and mailed them in, and they saved the Utah County something like $100,000 in postage costs. Mike McKell was too cheap to put a stamp on his envelope, and so he mailed it in. And when the Utah County clerk called him out, his answer was not to say, you know what, you're right. 80 cents is not that big of a deal. I'll go ahead and put it on. Instead, his answer is to go and pass a law that means that that method, whether you put a stamp on your envelope or not, now becomes private information that we can't know. Cheapskate's gonna cheapskate, I guess. But I just can't believe, I just feel like he should have just put a stamp on his envelope. And the Utah County clerk only disclosed this to the public because he was like, he was attacking my program and telling people not to put a stamp on their envelope while I'm trying to save money for the taxpayers, because you have other methods of voting. Like, it's free if you go stick your ballot into the ballot drop box, or you go vote in person. They don't have the postage costs. He's trying to save money, and here you have the state senator that is encouraging people not to put stamps on their envelopes. Very irresponsible. But what are you gonna do? Anyway, he's got a bill, and it's SB 277. Let me just bottom line up front here is everybody should oppose this bill. This bill is bad for transparency, and it is a bill to amend our grandma laws, and it'll do two things. It will get rid of the State Records Committee, and it'll get rid of part of our grandma law that allows government bodies to disclose data if the interests favoring access are greater than or equal to the interest favoring restriction of access. Okay. Our State Records Committee is actually, it's a really good body, to be totally honest with you, because I actually do grandma requests a fair bit. I know people that do them a lot more than me, but it has 6 members, and they're from a variety of backgrounds. And specifically, what I've got up on here is a screen that tells you the membership of it. So you've got one individual from the private sector whose profession requires the individual to create or manage records that, if created by a governmental entity, could be private or controlled. So you might have someone that works for a government contractor in that position. An individual with experience with electronic records or databases as recommended by a statewide technology advocacy organization that represents the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. The director of the Division of Archives and Records Services, or the director's designee. 2 citizen members. 1 person representing political subdivisions as recommended by the Utah League of Cities and Towns. And 1 individual representing the news media. So this is a broad array of people. And it's actually a good system. So typically when you make a grandma request, you'll first go, they'll have like a grandma officer who will review it. If that person denies it or partially denies it, you can appeal to the chief administrative officer of that same political subdivision. And then if that person denies it, you can appeal it to the state records committee, where you can get a hearing before these 6 people. And they do a good job, I think. And one of the statistics that came out is that 98% of their decisions that are then appealed, I think it's to a district court, have actually been affirmed. That's how good they are. And then, I mean, there's no guarantee that there's going to be lawyers on here. So that's pretty impressive. So Mike McKell wants to get rid of this, though, and replace it with one person who will decide the grandma appeals instead of the state records committee. What that will do, the person would be appointed by the governor. So you can kind of guess where this is going, but the goal seems to be less transparency. And when you think about this, I guess I would ask people, why do you think anybody that works for our government would want less transparency? I think far too much of what our government does is hidden from the public. And you're seeing the impact of this on the federal level with the whole DOGE, right? DOGE is exposing just a web of corruption that and let me say that, I believe the government is corrupt. I never imagined it is as corrupt as what we're seeing exposed by DOGE. The left's answer to this, of course, is somehow that this is all approved, so we should not think it's corrupt. But it is completely and utterly corrupt. It's clearly been funding a lot of the Democrat Party and their little, their little groups and whatnot. And so I just wonder if we have similar issues going on in Utah. We have a pretty big budget. I think it's about $30 billion, which is a huge amount to spend on a population that's about 3.5 million people. And I was trying to look to see if I could find the details of that budget a couple weeks ago, and because I wanted to put it into ChatGPT and have it, like pull out maybe something interesting. I wasn't able to find like a real, just like line by line on the budget, so I have to keep looking. But I think we have definite obvious corruption problems that are right in front of you, right? Here's a couple of them. One is they're going to spend $1 billion building this gondola that'll go from, okay, so I'm going to be honest, I'm bad at this. It either goes into Little Cottonwood Canyon or Big Cottonwood Canyon. It's definitely got people all on the East Bench worked up. I know people in Alta don't like it. And I understand, okay, like if I lived over there, I live in Riverton. But if I lived over there and I thought this big, ugly, hunking thing was going to be built and ruin my view, I would also be upset about it. In addition, I think it was last week, the groups that are fighting this came out with a study showing that it will cost $1,000 per household in Utah. I think that's a lot of money to spend on a gondola that will basically be to take people to a couple of ski resorts that are in the canyon. And those ski resorts are owned by, I believe, some billionaires. So I'm sure that there's corruption involved in this and involved in the decision making, right? Because there's all sorts of other ways you could have handled the crowds that are going into the canyons. One is better busing, which we don't seem to have. And I've heard people complain that it's not frequent enough. And I say this as somebody who refuses to take mass transit, but that's my own thing because I took it for a long time and I'm not going to be bothered with it. But I think I can tell you, based on my own experience from taking mass transit for years and years and years, that frequency and reliability are really important if you're going to have people take it. And so, for example, that there's a lot of people that want to get back to those ski resorts. You could have buses probably running every 10 minutes, I bet, when it's peak season. And you could probably have them full because there's that many people that want to get back and go skiing. But we're not doing that. It's almost like they're purposely not doing it to justify having the gondola instead. And that's something for people to think about, right? Are there cheaper easier ways to deal with this than building a gondola. And then for those of you that believe in climate change, I should say the climate change is man-made, what if the snow stops falling in the canyon? Now you built this gondola to nowhere, right? I mean, is it worth it? I don't know the answer to this. But I will say, I think there's some corruption involved with it. I've talked to some people that were telling me about this, I think it's a group, government agency perhaps, called Mountain Accord. And that Mountain Accord predated I think it's the Central Wasatch Commission that recommended the gondola, and that what was it called? Mountain Accord, that was found that they illegally had meetings and they did not open them up to the public. And then they came up with these conclusions, and a lot of those, even though that was found to be illegal or a violation of OTMA, the Open Meetings Act, that they still use those conclusions in the successor group that came up with the recommendation to the gondola. And maybe we can go more deeply into this issue in the future. I have some people we could interview about it, but I think, like, we probably have similar corruption issues in Utah. That's one example. You have the baseball stadium and hockey stadiums from last year, right? The legislature were like falling over themselves to hand $1 billion each to Gail Miller and Ryan Smith, who are both multi-billionaires. So they could build these stadiums. They get all the benefit from it, by the way. So all the profits from the teams they get to keep, all benefit goes to them. We are stuck with the cost of it. And so, I just wonder, like, what went into giving them those billionaires $1 billion, right? Do you think that it's from giving donations to politicians? I think there's probably something to that. Or is there potentially other corruption involved as well? So for example, would they use a lot of our legislatures full of developers? Will the people who develop those stadiums be connected to legislators so that they're going to make a ton of money off a taxpayer, I would say, boondoggle that they approved? We could find this out through grandma requests. But if Mike McKell's proposals go through, it will make our government that much less transparent. Now, so I told you, so back to this. So one piece of this is getting rid of the State Records Committee, right? I think that's a bad move. I've actually had experience with the State Records Committee. That's been in one example, because I think the State Records Committee does a good job. And they tend to be a little bit more on our side versus on the government side. And so the agencies and government employees are a little bit afraid of it. In one example, I made a request to the governor's office, and I wanted to see if anyone in his administration had been involved in trying to suppress speech. And I was specifically looking to see if there was any communications with Twitter at the time, Meta or Google, and if they had used, they had these portals you could use to actually report different posts and stuff to have them taken down for misinformation, quote unquote misinformation. They came back to me and said, okay, well, if you want us to fulfill this request, you have to pay for it. And it was some like ridiculous, I don't even know if they gave me a dollar amount. It was just ridiculous. I appealed it to the chief administrative officer. He affirmed the decision of the initial grandma officer. I then appealed to the State Records Committee, and I was ready to go. So, it was going to happen like 2 or 3 days later. I was preparing to go, and then the governor's office actually sent me an email and said, hey, we're going to go ahead and give this to you and waive the fee like you requested, because I just kept appealing their denial of my fee waiver. We'll just give it to you so that this is a moot point and we don't need to go before the State Records Committee anymore, because they were afraid of what was going to happen. Because obviously, I would think I would meet weighing the interest of transparency against the interest in privacy or keeping something secret. I would obviously win that if you're talking about a government official trying to suppress my free speech rights or anyone's free speech rights, because this wasn't aimed at me particularly, it was aimed to see if they did it to anybody. They knew that. They understood that. And so I think there's some benefits to the State Records Committee. We should want to keep it. The second piece of this is there is that balancing test. That's about a weighing test. Balancing test is a better way to say it. Under current grandma law, if a record is protected, so for example, the signatures on a signature petition, for those of you who are Lyman supporters, so the signatures on the petitions used to get yourself on the GOP primary ballot, you can, the government agency that holds the petitions can use this balancing test. They can say, do the interests favor access? Are the interests that favor access greater than or equal to the interests favoring restriction of access, right? And then they could release them. And in fact, the Washington County clerk actually wanted to release all of their petition signatures for, I think, one of the state school board races. They got overruled by the Washington County attorney because that guy said there was a criminal case or criminal investigation. But the point is, this balancing test is actually very useful to have, and it benefits citizens. So my point to all of you is, I could not find a hearing scheduled on this, but Mike McKellar is pushing this very hard. For multiple sessions now, every session there have been moves to make our government less transparent. And I think that is all bad news. It's been bad news from the beginning. I think last year is when they did the whole vexatious requester. So if you make too many grandma requests, they'll say you're a vexatious requester and then cut you off and start charging you fees. We don't want this bill. If anything, our entire effort should be towards increasing transparency, not decreasing it. And I actually think moves like this will put the supermajority at risk because, I mean, if I was a Democrat, I would be completely batshit crazy. Sorry about the swearing, but I can at least make the argument that I'll be more transparent than they are, right? I mean, sometimes people will vote and say, you know what, there's some risk with you being crazy, but wanting to trans kids, wanting to have illegal aliens all over the state, wanting to increase my taxes like crazy, wanting to take away my right to free speech, but at least you're transparent and the other side is not. People can get very, so as the Democrats course correct, the transparency could be a big part of their argument. And if the legislature keeps moving in this fashion of making government less and less transparent, it's going to give the Democrats an opening. So I would warn people to be careful of this. I don't think it's a good idea. Okay, let's see here. Here's my other point to this, okay? So the Utah Media Coalition came out against this bill. Yeah, I think in this case, they're correct. It's SB 277 should be defeated. My criticism here is that they're so they're so insular. They only want it's a mainstream media coalition. Although it's not what we're called Utah mainstream. Well, we're Main Street Media. They're mainstream media. So they're it's like your Salt Lake Tribune. So they're fake news. Your Deseret News, which is aimed at liberals. KSL, blah blah whatever. But the point being that they are actually, what I think should happen here is they need to broaden their coalition a little bit and bring in alternative podcasters and alternative sources of media because they'll get more support for stuff like this. I think one of the things I've been noticing is that a lot of liberals look down on those of us who are conservative and they think we're stupid. And so instead of adding us to their coalition and working with us on policies where we agree, I think they just look at us as being stupid and not worth the time. They would make a lot of headway if they started reaching out to conservative podcasters in Utah and added them to statements like this, right? Because our legislators are overwhelmingly Republican and they want to satisfy their base. So that would be my recommendation to the Utah Media Coalition. If you want to be more effective, bring in people, even if you disagree with them on policy. Although you really shouldn't be about policy anyway, because you're a newspaper, but you should bring in other people. I think you'll be more successful in these lobbying efforts. Okay, let's keep going here. Let me see what I have next. Oh, if anybody wants to call in, again, the number is 385-899-2134. I know today is President's Day, so people may be on vacation. Let's see here. Let me just see. Okay, so let's go down to my next issue. Oh, okay. Okay. So then, here's my next one. Okay. So I think we've had victims of HOA abuse come on the show. I think we had 2 of them, didn't we? Last week we had Lon, and the week before we had Roland, I think. So we've had 2 people who talked about the abuse that they faced at their HOAs, right? And I'll just add to you, I don't live in an HOA, zero desire to live in an HOA. I think they suck. Having said that, it's not realistic to tell everybody that you should never live in an HOA because, for example, if you want to be in a condo, you have to have an HOA, and there are reasons to be in a condo instead of a house. There's people like HOAs for housing divisions because they have kind of standards and things like that kind of probably people in a neighborhood like mine might want. So I think we have to kind of understand that there are people who live in HOAs. And one of the keys to this is, though, that we need to make sure there's protections in place for those people, because what I found is that, basically, I run the Utah Gay Straight Coalition, and we had members who had suffered abuse at the hands of their HOA. And they came to me and said, look, will you help us with this issue? We want to try to get some sort of protections in place so that the HOA can't do what they did to me to other people. So with Lon's example, he had had permission to be able to have an Airbnb in his condo. He had that going on for years without any issues. And then all of a sudden, the HOA changes its mind. They let him, he follows their instructions, and then they start fining him. And he goes from having a very small, insignificant fine into thousands of dollars of fines. Now he has thousands of dollars of attorney's fees trying to resolve this dispute. So what we're trying to do is set up some method so that there's some protections in place for people in HOAs, because what it is it's a super local form of government, but it's contractual. So there's not due process like you would have for your local government or your county government if they try to do something to you. There's no requirements like that. And these HOAs can just abuse the residents that they don't like. And there's always a risk with this type of stuff that if you're very unlikable, I can't relate to this because I'm very likable, but if you're a very unlikable person, they could target you, right? Let's just say that you're annoying and you may have legitimate points, but the board doesn't like you, so now they just start targeting you to try to get you to move out. I think that probably happens. So we need to put in protections for place. We had hearings last Thursday and Friday before the House. I went to the House hearing. It was before the Political Subdivisions Committee. What was kind of interesting is I ran into Lanny Chapman. She is the Salt Lake County clerk, and she was there on a different bill called HB 27. HB 27, the main piece of this is it gives the clerks flexibility in terms of drawing precincts. And there's a specific issue where some precincts end up being very tiny. And so then the clerks don't feel comfortable releasing voter data from those precincts at the precinct level because they think you'll be able to figure out who voted which way. And so this will allow them to kind of group different those tiny precincts together and then release the data so you can't figure it out. What was interesting is that I talked to Lanny for a minute because her and I have been emailing back and forth, and we still don't have a resolution, but let me just show you guys this again. before, but give me a second. Let me tee this up because it's like 5:50. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, this is a PBS piece that I had actually talked about before, but let's play this.
The country are women. Chapman says her office has
these statistics are wild, right? I mean, 84% of people running elections are women. 92% are white. I'll be honest with you, I don't actually really care that much about the race issue, but 84% are women is very interested, and it requires asking more questions, right? Because to me, that indicates there could be discrimination going on against men. So let's listen. Yeah.
a similar makeup.
In my full-time team, I have about 1/10 of them are men. The remainder are female.
When it comes to
Okay. So that was very clear, right? Full-time staff. I'll play it one more time because I just want to make sure I heard it correctly.
In my full-time team,
I
have about 1/10 of them are men.
So 10% are men.
The remainder are female.
90% are female. Okay. Now, this came out a while ago. I want to say this came out in November or December. I think what she said there was very deliberate, right? So 9 out of 10 of her full-time staff are female. 1 out of 10 are men. So I had emailed her after this came out, and I said, can you please tell me, I'm concerned that this indicates there's discrimination going on. And the reality is there is totally discrimination going on in the Salt Lake County Clerk's office. I would not have thought it's based on sex, but they definitely discriminate against conservatives. The office has been run by a Democrat for now like 34, 35 years. It is filled with activist Democrats. When I ran for office, when I ran against Lanny in 2022, she was using her staff at the clerk's office to track me, and they were even posting on social media about me. One of them, I actually caught her because she did it during the day. I screenshotted it, and I filed a complaint against her because, again, she's not supposed to be doing politics or political. She's not supposed to be doing political activity during the workday and using her, I assume, her work computer. And I heard that Sherry Swenson may have just slightly disciplined her or told her not to do it again, even though I think they know the rules, and there need to be more serious ramifications when you break them. So anyway, so I emailed her after this came out, and I asked her, can you give me the number of job openings posted for the Salt Lake County Clerk's office over the past 10 years, the number of applicants for each of those jobs over the past 10 years, and the sex of the applicants for each job opening for the past 10 years. Okay, I wanted to know those 3 data points to get a sense of whether there's discrimination going on. Because let's say 90% of your applicants are female or 100% are female, I don't know. Then you could see the composition making some sense. In response, she actually responded to me and she said, "Oh, I was not talking about my full-time staff when I said that statement in the PBS interview. I was talking about temp employees." I responded and I said, "Here's the quote from the piece. You said full-time staff. You did not say temp employees," and it was very deliberate. And I think I've said this before. I think she thought this was like a yes, queen moment. Like there's a lot of these liberal white ladies who think that filling up every single industry with just women is this great accomplishment, and they'll discriminate against men to get there, right? And then they want everyone to celebrate it. So I went back to her and I said, hey, here's the quote, right? You did not say what you basically stopped gaslighting me. You did not say temp staff. You said full-time staff. And I bet you she maybe even had the questions ahead of time. So I said, have you messaged PBS to tell them that you misspoke, right? And then I also asked her for a list of her full-time employees, because I can tell you a boy's name from a girl's name, and whether it's 90% female or not. Well, so I saw her at this committee hearing, and she was sitting right in front of me. So I said, hey, are you going to send me the list of your employees? I'd like to see it. Which I don't think that she should have. She could have. She was sitting there with her computer. She could have just actually sent it to me right then. Her response was, oh, well, you need to make a grandma request for this. I don't know why I need to make a grandma request for a list of employees. I'll do it. But I think she's hoping I don't do it, because like I said, I think the answer is 90% of her employees are females. I have been there. It's very obvious that there are not a lot of men in that office. The other part that was kind of interesting is that she claims that she wrote PBS and told them that she meant temporary staff and not full-time staff. And the way she said it suggested that there's a note somewhere on PBS's site saying this is full-time, that she misspoke. There is no note. I looked for it. I sent her another email and said, hey, I checked what you said. I'm not seeing any sort of clarification saying that you actually had that when you said full-time staff, you meant temp staff. Can you show me where that is? And can you send me a copy of the email or message, however you sent it, that you sent to PBS telling them that you misspoke and you want this clarified? I haven't heard back from her yet, but hopefully I'll hear back soon and we can close this up. But if I don't, I plan on making a grandma request, because I will get that message that she sent to PBS, that she allegedly sent to PBS. We're going to figure this out. I want to know, how do you get to 90% women in what is essentially a government desk job? And the piece of this that I think is interesting is that women always, if there's a male-dominated industry, there's a concerted effort by women to add, and liberals, and actually, these progressive men, to now make sure that we add lots of women to it, right? We promote them, we make them go into that industry, etc. Where is the effort on the flip side? If there's a female-dominated industry, for example, running elections, teaching is another one. I'm sure there's nursing. Why aren't we trying to get men to get into and promoting them over women as they do the flip side, and hiring them over women as they do the flip side, so that we can now fix how overwhelming it is with one sex and not the other? Why does it only go one way? And I think people maybe should ask that question. Why does it only go one way? I'm going to turn on my lamp here. It's getting dark in my office. Okay. So there's that. Now, my other observation is this: a top target for the Salt Lake County GOP in 2026 should be the Salt Lake County clerk. She is running the most important office in Salt Lake County, and that is where everything flows from. If you understand, by controlling the elections, she has a lot of power. For example, and I'll tell you, it's going to be very difficult to dislodge her, because unlike a regular candidate, she actually has access to the withheld voters. So about 15% of our voter rolls in Salt Lake County are classified as withheld. And that means that nobody can see them except government employees. Well, she can send them mail as the Salt Lake County clerk that no candidate can send them. So she's got a lock on 15% of the voters, with an ability to specifically send them mail. And I guarantee you that leading into 2026, she will send them mail. right after she won in 2022, she sent everybody a voter registration card. Okay, like when you register to vote, you already get a voter registration card. She sent out a new one with her name because the whole point was to pump up her name ID on the taxpayer's dime. By the way, you don't even need the voter ID card because over 90% of people in Salt Lake County vote by mail. So like, what do you do with that card? You throw it in the garbage. But she did that on purpose because what she's doing is what Sherry Swenson used to do. She's using the taxpayer dime and the clerk's office infrastructure to promote herself. So she's going to be difficult to dislodge. But that's why you need probably a better party chair to be out there slamming her and exposing that she's not a good clerk. Now, and I would do that a few ways. One is obviously you need to talk more about her connection to Soros, and we need to probably dive into that to figure out how that happened. Anybody connected to Soros is not a credible person and is not trying to do good for the county or for your state or for your government. Those are people that are trying to undermine government structures. There's another piece to this that I know because in 2021, I ran the Salt Lake County GOP's Election Integrity Committee. One of the things that we did is I went and talked to people in the Utah County Clerk's office, and here's what they told me. They said in the 2020 election that they withheld results from the CD4 race. So this was the race between Burgess Owens and Ben McAdams. It was the first time they ran against each other. And at the time, Ben McAdams was the incumbent. The people in the Utah County Clerk's office that I talked to told me that they were sure that Salt Lake County was cheating. And so they held back. They normally would have just released all their results as they finished them, but they actually held them back so that Salt Lake County Clerk could not figure out what was needed to overcome the margin that comes out of Utah County. And so just, Salt Lake County tends to be more Democratic, even in the Congressional District 4, which has like some of the southern parts of Salt Lake County and then the northern parts of Utah County. And then actually it has a couple other counties too, but those are the two big ones. Utah County is very Republican. Salt Lake County is more Democrat. And so they thought Salt Lake County is messing with the numbers. So they waited to release their results when they knew that Salt Lake County couldn't do any more games with their results. The way that, and just so people understand, the way that a clerk's office can manipulate results, there's two things. One is signature verification. You can pass through signatures that actually do not match. And you can just say that they match, especially if they come from areas that you think are more Democrat. So that's one possibility. Another one is through ballot adjudication. And that is during the adjudication process. So typically the way your ballot gets adjudicated is that when you mark your ballot, if you use the wrong color, so if you use red, if you draw a picture on your ballot, some people do that. If you cross something out and change your vote, and a multitude of other reasons, your ballot will be set into a separate line when it's scanned into the software. And then a team of 2 at the clerk's office has to review it, and they have to determine how you intended to vote. And so during that process, they can change your vote. Now, they don't like when you say this because they try to claim, no, we're trying to figure out your intent. But that's the same as the whole hanging Chad thing in Florida. It's just an electronic version of that where they're trying to figure out your intent. And my view is we should actually ban ballot adjudication. I think if you vote by mail and you mess up or you use red pen, that's your fault. That's not my fault. And I should not have to bear any the potential for a clerk to have giving clerks discretion to then figure out your ballot when you didn't follow instructions and you could have voted in person where you wouldn't have had that problem. So the point here, though, is that, the Utah County clerk, the people there, they thought that there were problems with how Salt Lake County was running elections. That was under Sherry Swenson as clerk. But by 2020, she was like, I was basically like Joe Biden, the Joe Biden of Utah County, of Salt Lake County. I don't even know if she knew what was going on. Lanny Chapman was pretty much running the show. So if you thought there was cheating going on, which is basically what the Utah County Clerk's employees were telling me, then there probably was, because they know more about the system than you and I do. And so that's why it's really important, though, to dislodge the Democrat out of the Salt Lake County Clerk's office. Just to make this point, Maricopa County in Arizona is kind of the equivalent of Salt Lake County. It has a much bigger population. I think it's like 3 times the size, but population-wise, I don't know about geographic area, but it probably, like we represent 1/3 of the state's population. They just elected a Republican in Maricopa County. So they replaced like a real, I don't know if the previous guy was a Republican, now I think about it, but like a conservative. And he's already making changes to make the system more transparent, to make sure their voter rolls are clean. That's something we don't know if it's being done in Salt Lake County or in Utah, really in general, as Aaron Davidson talked about. And so that is a really important race. And it's disappointing when you show up at a legislative hearing. They have a bill that I don't even like, strikes me as pretty innocuous. And the only people they have testifying, clerks wise, are Lanny Chapman. And then I think it's the Davis County clerk, so Brian McKenzie. And then Chris Null is sitting right next to Lanny Chapman. He's the Salt Lake County GOP chairman. Right now he's become good friends with her. He thinks he's going to turn her into a Republican. And I'm like, I don't understand. To me, it strikes me as the Republican Party's already given up. And, frankly, I don't know why anyone would run the race, because it will be difficult to dislodge her. And the party has shown that it's incapable of winning countywide races. So, I hope someone runs, and I hope maybe we get better leadership going forward that can actually go and win these countywide races. We should win them. The Democrats are completely crazy. They're beatable, but I think it takes a ground game that we don't have. It takes messaging that we never seem to have. There's just a lot to it. And so I'm just hoping that we can maybe, well, like I said, I hope someone runs. I hope the party actually prioritizes it and doesn't just give up before the race even starts, which is what I'm afraid is going to happen. And that we actually flip that race. If you flip that race, it'll make a huge difference in how elections are run in this county. And it could really be, like you see this with a conservative in Utah County. You can have the innovation you need to make the system more secure, to get more people to vote in person, which I think is something we need to do, because we want people to start showing their IDs, and to really make our system better, which we haven't had happen yet. The other thing I was going to say is, those 2 clerks, our legislature seems pretty happy with a Democrat county clerk. Our governor is very happy with a Democrat county clerk. Our lieutenant governor is happier with a Democrat county clerk, because if you notice, their focus, their ire is all aimed at the Republican in Utah County. That's who they are always focused on, as, oh, he's doing the innovation he's doing to get more people to vote in person. They don't like that. And maybe we should be asking the question why. Our whole goal, and I know there's that bill that just went through the House that I like, that will actually force everyone to show a voter ID, or photo ID, not a voter ID, it's your photo ID. So give me 1 second, let me let my dog out. Okay. Yeah, so anyway, so that's a really important race. I hope we focus on it, and I hope this that the next Salt Lake County GOP chairman understands how important that race is, even compared to the other. Even the district attorney's race is important. Those are kind of your 2 key races, and hopefully the Republican Party can kind of get its act together, get its game together, and win those 2 races in 2026. It's coming up fast. Okay, let me get back to HB 217. Okay, so this is the bill. Representative Walter is sponsoring it. What it will do is it will set up an HOA ombudsman. And this is why I was actually at the hearing. The Lanny Chapman piece of this was just kind of an accident, but because I ran into her. I just happened to run into her. And by the way, I don't think she has a lot of outfits. You know, I think I've heard somewhere that it's women judge each other for what they wear. And I guess, you know, I'm gay, so like I've noticed this stuff, but I've seen her wear that same outfit multiple times. I kind of want it to be like, maybe it's time to get some new clothes. So HB 217, it'll set up an HOA ombudsman. I'll tell you, one of the things that's a little disappointing is the process of the legislature. I went up there and the hearing started at 8 a.m. and I was there at like 7:30. It's pretty early. I sat through a bunch of bills. I'll tell you, if you want to see a bunch of dweebs talking for, you know, like who love to hear themselves keep talking. I say this as I'm talking to you, but there was they had housing bills that came up. The housing bills, totally, it's like the whole thing is run by a bunch of dweebs and they just love to hear themselves talk. So well, I had to go through multiple bills about different housing and zoning issues. The HB 217, this HOA ombudsman, which I think is kind of an important bill, it ends up being the last bill because they moved it around. They have to end the hearing, I guess, at 10, which I didn't realize. Then they cut public comment to 30 seconds. They don't even let everyone speak. And then they end up saying, okay, well, we're just going to hold this bill until tomorrow, and we'll have another hearing tomorrow that this will start that hearing. Well, you know, that's great and all, but I'll just tell you that I understand how difficult it is for people to go and try to comment and participate in the legislative process because, you know, like I have my own business and it's hard for me to say, well, okay, I just sacrificed basically like 4 hours and I got to comment for 30 seconds and that was it. And then we were done. And they didn't even there were 5 or 6 people that were online that didn't get to comment. I'm hoping, I wanted to go on Friday, but I didn't have time because, like I said, I have people in town visiting me, as I said, with my friend, and we had to go to that Valentine's Day Lady Bunny Queer Valentine or whatever event. So I didn't have time. Now, you know, like the Utah Gay Straight Coalition supports the bill. And so I was there because I wanted to make a comment. And so maybe I'll just read my statement to you guys. Oh, hold on, my friend Charlene said she'll be able to call in. Just give me 1 second. I think she might be able to give us an update. 8, 9, 2, 1, 3, 4. If you're listening online and you want to call in, I would love to hear from you. It is let's see, 385-899-2134. You are listening to the Goud Crowd. Okay, I'm trying to fix this. Let's see. I can't see anything right now. Okay. Let me get back to it here. Let me find my statement and I will read it to you. And I try to keep stuff short and to the point because I don't want people to be bored, you know? And plus, in this case, I actually was less than 30 seconds when I said 30 seconds. Because I was like, well, there's people here that are actual victims that showed up. I want you to hear from them. Like, we totally appreciate what you're doing. So this was my statement. My name is Goud Maragani. I'm the chairman of the Utah Gay Straight Coalition. We thank Representative Walter for working with us and support this bill. Over the past few years, our organization has worked with victims of HOA abuse and researched what other states have done to protect their homeowners. Several of the victims who worked with us have filed formal complaints with CAI, the national organization that monitors and trains HOA management companies. This is kind of an interesting issue, but we'll get to this. After the session, I would be happy to review these formal complaints with you. A common thread among victims of HOA abuse is a board that refuses to communicate with its homeowners and heavy-handed abusive management companies. Currently, there are no agencies that can help. This is crazy when you consider that your home provides a roof over your and your family's heads and is the most important and biggest investment every person makes, or most people make. Our HOA committee recommended that the state create an HOA ombudsman and require that HOAs and homeowners engage in mandatory ADR before they can file a lawsuit. Nevada is a good model to look at. In Nevada, before any civil action can be taken regarding a dispute relating to the governing documents of an HOA, the disputing parties must complete the ADR process laid out in Nevada law. While we appreciate that this bill improves the current situation and is a step in the right direction, we urge this committee to add a provision requiring parties to engage in mandatory ADR before a lawsuit can be filed. We think that could help resolve many disputes cheaply and efficiently and prevent at least some of the abuse currently occurring. So that's why I wanted to be there, because my whole thing was, I just think this is a good start. And by the way, whenever I testify in bills, I'm always trying to push the legislature to go a little bit further. Utah tends to be very incremental in how it moves policy. And so I think the goal of those of us who are conservative is to try to push our legislators to do the best or get as close as possible to our ultimate goal. And so, when I got the 30 seconds, I just talked about how I think we need to add mandatory ADR, require ADR before you can file a lawsuit, and add that to the bill. Obviously, I don't think that didn't happen. I wasn't able to go to the hearing the next day, but it did pass out of committee, and it was unanimous of all the committee members who were there. And so that's fantastic. So we're on the right track to have an HOA ombudsman, which is at least a start to helping those people who live in HOAs and give them some protection. And again, like I said, I don't like HOAs, but I appreciate why in some cases you need them, obviously like a condo. And in some cases people like them. And like Daybreak, I think people like it over there because everything is clean, the houses all look uniform. I get it. I understand it. But we just want to make sure that people are protected. They're not being discriminated against because they're gay or something like that. And they can protect their home. So let me see here. This bill will be a big improvement. So I hope it passes the Senate too. If you're out there and this is an issue that interests you, I'll try to post about it on X when I hear about the next hearing, because I think it'll still have to be passed by the House and then it'll go over to the Senate. So let's see how this all works out. I will go ahead and I'll post about it. I will say if the Senate doesn't hear it, hopefully we can try to see if Representative Walter can bring it up during interim, and we can once again go down. We could try to get the mandatory ADR before you can file a lawsuit, then add it to the bill to come up during the next session. And sometimes that's how this process works. It takes more than one session to actually get a bill passed. And this is an example of that, actually, because the first time I brought this up, I think was in 2023. I went and met with Speaker Wilson at the time, and Representative Lyman, then Representative Lyman, had a HOA ombudsman bill that we were supporting for the same reasons as we support this bill. So, except now we have even more examples of why we need it. Okay, so my next thing here is, let's see. I want to skip one. We'll come back to this in a minute. So I saw this interesting post by Normie Utah, and I just want to make a point here real quick. So let me share my screen. Okay, can you guys, there we go. Okay, so what this says is that in 2021, Ryan Smith via the Utah Jazz had college scholarships where one of the explicit requirements was an applicant could not be white. I got to be honest with you. I still cannot believe that this is legal in America, right? I don't know if this is just something that was allowed because Biden was president, and now that we have Trump, they'll actually come after this type of discrimination. And governor support for this. That was our first indication not all was right with newly elected Governor Cox. Okay, so here's my issue with this. First of all, Governor Cox obviously gave his full-throated support for that DEI scholarship because his kids don't have to compete to get a scholarship. They just get that governor's scholarship that they give, that 3 out of his 4 kids gave. Now he'll claim that his kids are all geniuses, unlike your children, and they earn them. But I think we all know that that's not why they got them. Okay, so I know that's why they got them. Maybe some of you don't quite believe it. I actually disagree with Normie Utah that this was the first indication, or one of the first indications, that Governor Cox is a problem. And this was in 2021, right? He's governor at the time. In 2020, here is your. Now, keep in mind, I only moved here. I moved to Utah in June of 2020. It was right around. Oh God, what's that day? I cannot. Why the word? I can't remember the door. I'm sorry. It's the holiday where you guys celebrate discovering Utah, and I can't the Pioneer Day. I came right about Pioneer Day because I remember there were fireworks for Pioneer Day, and my partner at the time, we had no idea what was going on. We just were like, wow, these guys like fireworks here. So that was 2020. So I think that would have been June is when I moved here. Although whatever, doesn't matter. That's around the time. So here is, let me share this article, and you can see this should have been a good sign to everybody that Governor Cox is woke. Here he is. So Lieutenant Governor Cox apologizes to protesters over failed conversion therapy bill. So in 2019, they tried to get a bill passed through the legislature to ban conversion therapy. And what conversion therapy is, what conversion therapy is this, it was traditionally what it was, I should say, is they would do stuff like like for gays, they would electrocute you, they would make you look at like gay porn, and then when you got aroused, they would electrocute you so you wouldn't. They would do all sorts of physical things to you to make it so that kind of get the gay to go away. It's not praying the gay away since they're doing physical things to you. But the way that conversion therapy what it's turned into, though, is the idea that if you want to go and talk to somebody to not be gay anymore, that now we consider that conversion therapy. And I'll just say, like, if you're an adult and you want to go and try to, not be gay, I don't really know why I should care about that. You're not required to be gay or straight, right? Like, you can do what you want. But in 2019, they tried to pass a conversion therapy bill through the legislature. It failed. I think it failed partly on concerns about free speech. But Governor Cox, when these activists went, and I guess they were upset, and they went and protested in front of the governor's office, he went and he joined them, and he cried with them. I believe is what happened. He apologized to them for the failure to pass that bill. He sat down. Okay, so according to Twitter thread from Salt Lake Tribune, writer Christina Giardinelli, Cox sat down with youth protesters to read an apology letter from Governor Herbert. Cox reportedly said it was a mistake to not spend more time discussing the bill with individual legislators. He also agreed with protesters that LGBT. Oh, look at LGBT. Do you see that? What's missing? LGBT. Now the T, we don't recognize the T on this show. It's now LGB, but this is very different than what you see today, right? LGBT advocates didn't have enough say during the bill's drafting period. He stated that saying parents have a right to conversion therapy is like saying that parents have a right to push a child down the stairs. That's some pretty woke talk there. Okay, so I don't really know much about Governor Herbert except that he locked me in my home or tried to enforce me to wear a mask, which I do not appreciate. So what I'll say is this. After this bill failed, he went and he worked with DOPL, so the Department of Professional Licensing, and they came up with a rule. The rule banned conversion therapy, but it was so strict that it prevented therapists from helping children suffering from gender dysphoria. And what I mean is this. If a little boy said he was a girl or thought he was a girl, and the parents then took him to a therapist and he told the therapist that he was a girl, the therapist could not, let me add, could not tell the child that he is not a girl and that he is in fact a boy, and could not help him become comfortable in his birth sex because that was considered conversion therapy under the rule. In 2023, I worked with Representative Mike Peterson from up in Logan. He's a good guy. Actually, he has a great family. His wife is fantastic too. And we worked with him when I was head of the Utah Log Cabin Republicans at the time. And we came up with a bill that would allow talk therapy, right? So basically it bans conversion therapy, this physical, like I said, I gave you an example, like electrocution. There's other methods as well to do it. And it said you could do talk therapy. So if a child thought he or she was trans or the opposite sex, the therapist could then talk to them and help them become comfortable in their birth sex. The bill ended up going through some amending because Equality Utah came in. They initially opposed the bill completely and wanted it to fail because I don't actually think that Troy Williams understands policy that well. At least what we were trying to do. He has kind of a gut reaction that I think he needs to trans people in order to raise money. He's basically a grifter who will damage your children's mental and physical health to make a buck. So we ended so in 2023, we fixed the problem that Governor Cox caused by passing a bill that allowed talk therapy. So now, like I said, the bill got amended a little bit, which I didn't like, but that's life. And in the amendment, it wasn't as perfect as I thought the bill was initially. But now, at least, the therapist can provide the type of help that they think is necessary. And I'll just add that, like, my view, I am not a therapist, but my view is if a child has gender dysphoria, we want the therapist to explicitly help them become comfortable in their birth sex. The therapist who we talked to said that they don't do that they actually help the child explore. And I guess the hope is that they come to that correct conclusion that you can't change your sex, but they don't explicitly do that. So, you know, like my dream of what this should look like is a little bit different than what it actually looks like. Anyway, now with the fix that we did in 2023, a lot of kids will get the help that they need. And I'll just say, wokeness has a real cost. So for all the people that want to forgive Governor Cox for being woke because now he's doing better, there may be hundreds or thousands of children who didn't get the help that they needed from 2019 to 2023 because of what he did through that rule. And that now they're trans when they could have been helped to become comfortable in their birth sex. And he's responsible for that. And people that voted for him are also responsible for it. So my message is, like, don't allow people, you shouldn't move on from stuff like that. You should understand that there is real explicit damage that happens when you have people in power who don't understand how to make policy or who are woke. Okay, I'm moving things around a little bit. So it might look like I'm looking at the side. Here, I'm back to front. Okay, now I have this was a news one. Oh, this was good news. Okay. So let me get this image up. This is such good news. So last year, Carrie Ann Lisenby passed a bill that set up all these different hurdles you have to overcome for a trans, let's see here, let me put this, for a trans prisoner to be moved to the opposite sex facilities. And by the way, we all know this only goes one way, right? There's no trans man, so a woman who wants to go into the men's facility. It's only trans women, so men pretending to be women who want to go into the women's facility. I'm sure there's nothing to that. So last April, the U.S. Department of Justice actually filed a lawsuit against Utah, saying that our Department of Corrections was not enforcing Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act because by providing the appropriate treatment for men pretending to be women. They said that that was actually discrimination. And the lawsuit is, I actually have a copy of it and I was going to post about it. The lawsuit is completely ridiculous. But Carrie Ann Lisenby, actually, that was one of the reasons why the legislature passed that statute, was to say, hey, we do have these hurdles that if you can overcome them, you can be placed in the opposite sex prison facilities. Now, I talked to Representative Lisenby recently, and she told me that there are no men in women's prisons in Utah. Now, I will say, I think that she meant on the state level. I don't know about Salt Lake County. I was talking to her. I actually think we should go and repeal that bill or amend it to say men are banned from women's prison facilities. I don't care what you do, you can't go there. The actual answer is if a man has mental health problems and thinks he's a woman, you just put him into a separate part of the men's prison. It's that simple. I will say last year I brought this up. I went and testified, and I opposed her bill for this reason. I think I opposed it. Or I said we should amend it so that men can't go into women's prisons. And then, Senator Thatcher called me a demagogue because I don't think men should be allowed in women's prisons. So anyway, we have that bill on the law. I think Representative Lisenby thinks that as written, it would be impossible to put a man into a women's prison facility. They could never meet the different requirements to be able to be moved. However, I think they could in Salt Lake County because we have activist leftists that run every single agency in this county. And so if you think that they will not put a woman or a man in a women's jail in Salt Lake County, you are sorely mistaken. And so I think now with the Trump administration here, we should now go back, amend that law, and ban men from women's jails. Now, what's wonderful is what I was just talking about is that lawsuit that DOJ filed under Biden. It was their civil rights division. They dropped the lawsuit, so it's done. And so now there's no federal pressure on Utah to try to allow men with mental health problems to go and be placed in a women's jail. So that's kind of, I think it's good news. We should celebrate. And this happened before Harmeet Dillon has even been made the civil rights division, the head of the civil rights division. So it's good news. Okay, let me see what I have next. I have, this is Candace Perucci's bill. Okay, let's talk about this one. Okay, so let me just, I have this chat feature, but I can't see the bottom. My call screener is lonely, so call in if you're listening. You listen to the Goud Crowd on KMMU.org, or you can hear it on my X handle, or on the Mainstream Media Utah X handle, or their YouTube or Rumble. And you can call in at 385-899-2134. I will say that it's nice when you call in because I get tired talking for so long. Okay, what was I going to do? Oh, okay. Here, let me share this with you. Let's see if my friend is going to call in. Hold on. She said she's gonna try to call in. So let's see what happens. Okay, let me show you this article. And I think, this is kind of interesting. So here's the article, right? In 2019, the Utah legislature passed a bill that reduced the maximum penalty for all Class A misdemeanors or I think for all of the misdemeanors, to 364 days from 365. This was specifically done to make it so that immigrants, legal or illegal, who commit misdemeanors cannot be deported. Okay, so and just so everybody understands, that alone, I think, makes you a sanctuary state, right? You're changing your criminal code to accommodate illegal aliens, and this is a problem. Now, Utah has a little bit of an open borders culture. At least that's what I've noticed. There is, I think, I would consider it a little bit of toxic empathy. When I found this when I ran for the state house seat. I live in an area that has been completely flooded by illegal aliens. Okay, like they are everywhere. They're in Harriman. There are thousands of them. They're filling up high density housing all throughout Harriman. They're primarily from Venezuela. And they're also putting massive pressure on the schools. Crime has gone up. There's gang violence now. Oh, this reminded me, actually, I almost forgot about this. There's also graffiti. So, I have people that tell me about graffiti that happens in our area. And so someone just sent me a message the other day saying, "Hi, Goud. Was just out for a walk and saw Harriman city workers doing a high." This was on Friday, 2:45. "Hi, Goud. FYI, was just out for a walk and saw Harriman city workers doing a high pressure water erase job on some graffiti, which I hadn't seen before. It said, 'Fuck ICE, 1312 ACA.'" Okay. I apologize that I just swore. I guess I should have put a warning or whatever, trigger warning. Just so you guys know, according to Grok, 1312 ACA in graffiti refers to the acronym ACAB, which stands for All Cops Are Bastards. The numbers 1312 are a numeric representation of the letters in ACAB, where each number corresponds to the positional letter in the alphabet. Okay, so he said it was spray painted on the Black Ridge Reservoir Maintenance Building located at the corner of Rose Summit and Briar Park Road. I didn't have my phone with me, so couldn't get a pic. He went back and he took a picture that shows where they washed it off. So, or they high pressured it off the wall. It's still wet. But that's what's happened to this area. It's changed, right? And now we have a gang problem out here that we didn't have before. So let me see here. Oh, okay. So, and this, by the way, Candace Perucci has represented this area. Not, I used to live in her district, but when they redistricted, I got moved out. But since 2020, she's been in the legislature. She was silent all that time as her district got invaded by illegal aliens. And what I found when I ran for state legislature is that there were these parents who were okay with it, right? They actually were telling me, "Oh, Goud, it's we like my daughter's." I think I had one guy tell me, "Oh, my daughter's class is 50% non-English speakers, but it's so wonderful because she gets to learn about their culture and like which she wouldn't be able to do otherwise." And all I could think to myself is, yeah, but is she getting an education? Right? Is that actually valuable to your child that half the class does not speak English? We're in America. Do you care about your own children? First of all, I mean, I think that to me that's toxic empathy. You're sacrificing your own children's future because now you want to look good and make it look like you actually are open and welcoming to these illegal aliens. And I think part of it is this whole love your neighbor concept, which has been somehow translated into love foreigners that invade your country over your own children. So I don't understand it. I think it's really weird. I'm glad I didn't have parents like that, because if that's you and you're willing to sacrifice your child's education so that a foreigner can come and use our resources, cause our property taxes to skyrocket, put massive pressure on our schools, increase crime. I can't tell you how many times I have opened X or read a newspaper to read about an illegal alien raping an underage girl in the state. One time, I've talked about this before, I think. I've at least posted about it on X. It was an 11-year-old girl, and this illegal met her at a soccer game, right? And I don't know if she was playing or her brother was playing, she was watching, exchanged phone numbers with her, then went to the house when her mother wasn't there and raped her. And you can say whatever criticisms you want of, I don't know how the guy talked to her without the mom knowing. I don't know how she was texting with this guy without the mom knowing. But at the same time, I just kind of feel like we shouldn't have this going on in our country. The guy shows up, has sex with her, and then says he thought she was 14. Well, newsflash, that is also illegal. So again, I'm guessing that mother is not happy that this illegal alien was let into the country unless she is also suffering from toxic empathy. I'm not going to sit here and advocate for sacrificing American children so that, whoever wants these open borders policies can import as many people as they need to. And I think part of it is driven by religions that have trouble keeping people in the pews because they go woke. So I think the LDS Church is one of them that's having some issues with that. And I think the Catholic Church has issues because of all the, all the abusing of boys that happen by priests turn people off to staying in the religion. The answer to that, to the wokeness, to the child abuse, is not to import foreigners to fill your pews through open borders policies that damage our country. It's to fix the problem. So I would say, for the LDS Church, and, obviously you guys have to run your church the way you want, but I would just say maybe try being less woke, and maybe people will come back because they actually want a religion that celebrates the family and the Family Proclamation is a very beautiful document, and more people will stay if they feel like that's the emphasis is on traditional families. Then with the Catholic Church, you just got to fix that whole pedophile problem and make it clear that it will never happen again. And I suspect a lot of people will come back. That would be my view. You don't need to import people. Fix the problem. Okay. Anyway, let me see here. Oh, and I come at this, as we keep talking about this Candace Perucci bill, let me just say, I come at this from the view of all illegal aliens need to be supported. I don't really care how long you've been here. The reason for this is you have used our resources for however long you've been here. You have stolen an American job. You've likely used a social security number that didn't belong to you. You've suppressed our wages. And so it's time for you to go. And you can go home, you can fix your home country. And that would be better than continuing with open borders policies here. But what Candace's bill, it's actually been weakened. She was trying to reverse what happened in 2019, where they reduced the maximum penalty for misdemeanors from 365 days to 364 days. She was originally going to just fully reverse it, but now she weakened the bill. So now, according to the amendment, the bill only increases the maximum penalty for offenses against the individual. That includes assault, stalking, threats against a school, child abuse, reckless endangerment, and more. The enhancement is also applicable for driving under the influence and reckless driving, but property crimes, shoplifting, and other misdemeanors would no longer be a deportable offense. property crimes. I think it would include burglary. So if an illegal alien burglarizes my house, Candace Perucci does not think that person should be deported. And according to Candace, she says, I have had a lot of discussions with members of our body and stakeholders. I don't know who these stakeholders are. And I think this really targets the individuals and criminals who are committing violent crimes in a better way without scooping up individuals who are in our country with a legal status. I'm going to be honest with you. If you're here legally and you're committing crimes, you need to go. Bye. Get out. We should have some minimum standards of if we allow you to come into our country, don't commit crimes. Or GTFO, it's time to go. Bye-bye. So anyway, so that's kind of like, this is a weakened bill now. This is, again, Utah, for some reason, Utah's politicians have not gotten the message that Americans sent nationwide, and that is that we don't want open borders. We want the illegals to get out of our country. It's time to go. We want our wages to go up. And a big piece of why they're suppressed is because there are, I'm going to give you the real number, 30 to 50 illegal immigrants in the US. I mean, sorry, 30 to 50 million. 30 to 50 million. They are suppressing wages massively, especially for working class people, but also, so for working class people on the upper scale, you have the H-1B visas suppressing tech jobs and other professional jobs, except the legal field. So that's why you see lots of lawyers who are all open borders, because they don't actually compete with any illegal aliens for their jobs. I'm one of the few that's like, get these people out of here. Now, she has some good aspects to the bill, so I want to be fair about this. According to this, it'll direct law enforcement to hand over immigrants to U.S. To ICE after they have served 1 year in jail or prison, so their deportation proceedings can begin. It'll require judges to consider immigrants a flight risk during criminal proceedings. I think this means that they would be jailed. They won't be, no bail. They should really just say no bail. And restricts nonprofits from transporting undocumented people. This is undocumented as the newspaper's term, people to Utah. So those are some good things. I'd like a little more detail on that though, because I'm wondering where it restricts nonprofits from transporting undocumented people to Utah. Shouldn't it be bans them? It may do that, and this is just worded weird, so I'll have to take a look at that. The point being, though, is that this is now a weakened bill, and in addition to this, the other thing that bothers me is that there are state cash benefits being given to illegal aliens, including Candace Perucci's own Utah Fits All scholarship. That is a bill that she passed that gives essentially vouchers, or the voucher equivalent to students to be able to homeschool, to be able to send their kids to private schools. And it is available to anyone who is a student in our schools, which would include illegal aliens. There's no citizenship requirement. And I think we should restrict it to citizens. And this is why, if you are an immigrant, legal or illegal, and you come here, and then let's say you brought your kids with you, so they're also immigrants, I am not sure why they should get treated equally to US citizens. I think in America, US citizens should get first preference for these types of benefits. Plus, we wouldn't, if you went to their country, trust me, you're not getting any benefits for being there. They're not going to treat us the same. So I think we need to change this. I hope maybe Candace will do it. I feel like she won't though, because Utah tends to have a little bit of an open borders culture. That's what I've noticed. And, I think it's a problem. I don't know if it's fixable. I just think for some reason, like I said, there's a lot of toxic empathy in the state. And people are being told that they have to support open borders, and they do. So, and that's why we have so many, that's one of the reasons why we have so many problems in the state. We have a lot of illegal aliens now taxing our social services. Okay, we'll see. I don't know if my friend is going to call in. Okay, I'm trying to think if I have anything else I want to talk about. I have one other thing. I know there's a bill out there. I'm just going to let's talk about this real quick. But there is a bill to expand the number of justices on the Utah Supreme Court. Yeah, and currently there are 5. There was a big thing when it went white female majority. They made a big deal about it. I will say this though, that they don't decide a lot of cases every year. I did a CLE recently, and I think they only do about 40 some decisions a year, which is about half as many as the US Supreme Court does. So they're not very productive. I recently had a case. It's some of you may know her, Sylvia Miera Fisk. She was sued. So I'm just gonna, that's kind of common terminology, but Amy Winder Newton is being sued by Dave Robinson, right, for defamation and conspiracy. I should say Amy Winder Newton and many other people. Amy, at the end of 2023, filed what's called a counterclaim against Sylvia, bringing her into that lawsuit. And the reason she did it is because Sylvia sent emails to Sim Gill, the district attorney, saying that Amy had led a bunch of women, including Candace Perucci, and there's some other, and then Lori Stringham, I think, to go to the Tribune with these false claims of harassment. So Amy said that Sylvia defamed her when she sent this email to Sim Gill. In response, Sylvia filed what's called a UPEPA motion, the Uniform Public Expression Protection Act. You can file these motions when somebody sues you for exercising one of your First Amendment rights, right? And petitioning your government is one of those, as well as that would be like free speech. So the judge, after Sylvia, so when a UPEPA motion is filed, the lawsuit between the two parties, or the parties that are the parties to the UPEPA motion, are stayed, meaning, and the court is required to make a decision on the UPEPA motion before it can do anything else. The only exception is that the court can decide a motion that is related or unrelated to the UPEPA motion. Okay. In this case, what happened is, after Sylvia filed her UPEPA motion, so the stay was in effect, Amy filed a motion for permissive joinder. I think it was under Rule 20 of the Rules of Civil Procedure. Amy's lawyer made a mistake. She should have actually filed her Rule 20 motion for joinder before ever filing the counterclaim, including Sylvia. So she should have gotten permission from the court to file the counterclaim. Had her lawyer done it appropriately, Sylvia would not have been able to file the UPEPA motion. So the judge, though, instead of deciding the UPEPA motion, he decided the later filed Rule 20 motion. And he denied the Rule 20 motion and then removed Sylvia from the lawsuit, or dismissed her from the lawsuit. And he said, since I dismissed you, I no longer have jurisdiction to hear your UPEPA motion. Okay. When he did that, he showed that that Rule 20 motion was directly related to the UPEPA motion. Because if you dismiss the person, if you decide this quote unquote unrelated motion, and it means that you can no longer decide the UPEPA motion, clearly they're related, right? That's logical. So the judge, and I think, and I don't like to attribute intention here, but I hate to do this because I think, unfortunately, Utah has a corruption problem. I think it was done to protect Amy. So Sylvia's lawyers at the time, they appealed that to the Court of Appeals, and the Court of Appeals decided, oh yeah, we don't have jurisdiction because you've been dismissed from the lawsuit. So now you can't appeal. It's almost like she's stuck in like hell, right? Like there's like no, like the Hotel California, like she went in, there's like no escape from this absolute hell. So then I took it and I filed a petition for writ of certiorari with the Utah Supreme Court, explaining how there was a clear legal error in what the district court did. Basically this district court judge completely undermined the UPEPA statute. And it was very clear from the hearing that he wasn't prepared and he didn't understand the law, right? And I'll say, I actually think it was a newer law. I don't know that all the lawyers, I think there's some people are trying to figure this out, okay? I guess I should be fair about this. But I feel like I've seen a judge going through it for the first time and being very prepared as very different than what I saw in that hearing. So I filed this petition for writ of certiorari, explaining to the court how this was a clear legal error and that it has ramifications because this now can be a way for courts to protect powerful people and completely undermine the protections that statute provides to somebody like Sylvia. And Sylvia is this middle-class retiree who now has $100,000 or something like that in attorney's fees. So we took it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ordered the other side to respond. The response was so-so, whatever. And then we filed a reply brief. And then the court issued a one-sentence decision just denying the writ for certiorari, allowing a clear legal error to stand and the UPEPA statute to be completely undermined. And I'll just tell you, I think without having fully read through this attempt to expand the court, I think that maybe it needs to be expanded because there's not enough. I think 5 people, maybe it's not enough for them to deal with more cases, but they need to take on a heavier caseload. They should be, at a state level, they should be handling errors like that and fixing them so that we don't have problems. What they did is they have now saddled somebody with attorney's fees that Amy should have paid. And let me just add that it was very clear in the district court hearing that if the judge had substantively decided the UPEPA motion, Sylvia would have won. Okay, he said that what Amy did was unseemly for an elected official to sue somebody like that. Oh, let me see if I can pull this up real quick. We have a couple minutes, so let me stop sharing because this isn't a case where she would have won the UPEPA motion, and so I think the court by doing that actually just hurt an innocent person instead of helping them, and I have real problems with that. So let me see if I can find this for you. Okay, here we go. I know I have. We did like a press kit. I got some crazy stuff in here. Okay, I'm still. Oh, here, UPEPA hearing excerpts. Let's see what we got. Okay. Okay. I think you guys can have this right.
That comes with the territory. Believe me, I know.
Yeah.
And I can't sue everybody who writes a negative comment about me in the Trib. I know that comes with the territory. How can we start allowing people, politicians, to sue people who are critical of that?
Okay. Here.
Candidly, I have no idea what Ms. Winder Newton thought she was going to gain by bringing a lawsuit against a third party who's making a statement of opinion and concern to Sim Gill. This just seems so unseemly to me that a sitting politician would try to sue somebody for making a comment to them publicly. I don't get this. I mean, if this sort of thing happened, this courthouse would be filled of claims against every senator in this case, the governor in this case. I mean, criticisms are made all the time of our public officials. And I just don't understand there must be a backstory for bringing Ms. Fisk in. I don't get it. I don't get the attempt to make this complicated, and I really don't get the concept why a sitting politician, an elected official, would be asserting a defamation claim against somebody for lodging a concern, criticism, what have you, to Sim Gill. This is beyond.
Okay. So I think that's very clear that had the judge decided the UPEPA motion, Sylvia would have won. And so I guess I'm disappointed that the Utah Supreme Court didn't pick up this writ, because I think it's important, and that those types of errors need to be fixed so that so that we're not having this repeated with other victims, really, because Sylvia in this case is a victim. And some may argue that maybe they're waiting for there to be different judges with different types of decision. But the reality of this is there's a victim now who didn't need to be a victim. And she's only a victim because the Supreme Court didn't come in and fix that district court judge's decision and the appellate court's decision. So I'm wondering if the answer is they can't handle the caseload, and so maybe if we go from 5 judges to 9, then they can take on a heavier caseload and start deciding more cases. They also, by the way, there just seems to be a real delay in decisions, because isn't there a decision about the redistricting that's been sitting there? Like, we still haven't gotten a decision over 2 years. I guess I think it's moving slowly, and we need, look, we may need to look at this. It's not really court packing in the traditional sense, since it's a Republican state just trying to add more judges to a Republican Supreme Court, right? It's not like you're not really trying to change the composure of it, because ostensibly, I assume it's all Republicans that are on the court anyway. You're just adding more Republicans to a Republican court. So I guess that's my thought without looking at it in more detail, but I will take a look at that one. I'm kind of curious where that goes. Okay, well, we have like 2 minutes left, so I believe that I am done. Oh God, sorry, my X is up and it's showing a video of Justin Trudeau at 23. I did not know. I think that's a pretty gay outfit. Okay, well, thank you so much for listening to the Goud Crowd. I hope there's there's helpful information in here. As bills pop up that I think are interesting, so like the ones we discussed today were SB 277, that's the grandma bill. HB 217 is the HOA ombudsman. I will post about it on X so that people can, and HB 226. I'll post about these on X so that people can go to the hearing, or you can at least send your legislators a message of support or oppose it. I mean, whatever, you do what you want. If I oppose it, I hope you oppose it too. So SB 277, we should get out there and oppose that bill. That's a bad bill. And we will be back next Monday. Enjoy the rest of your President's Day. Enjoy that your president is Donald Trump. And we will see you next time. Thanks for listening.